me something, Uncle Money?
Welcome to another episode of Practice Prosperity. We have a special guest today, Dr. Judi-Lee Webb. She comes from an interesting angle. She helps professionals, professional women, and a lot of other type of professionals go through their life, coping with the things that they went through, and help them get over their humps. So thank you very much for joining us today, Doctor.
I appreciate this. Thank you for the invitation.
So before we get started, can you please explain a little bit about your firm, the populations you serve, and the things that you do on a day in and day out basis?
Sure. I am a sole practitioner, so I'm a solo psychologist, and my practice name is Psychological Solutions of Atlanta, right here in Atlanta, of course. And I do virtual appointments, telehealth, as well as in-person sessions in the Cumberland, kind of Vinings, Cumberland area. I've been in practice here in Georgia since 2003. And I typically now, as I've gotten a little older, my population has, I've upped the age. I used to see children, but now really 16-year-olds on up till my oldest right now is in their 70s, I see couples as well. Of course, individuals, couples, families. Mainly general issues, life concerns, stress, anxiety, some depression, some mood disorders, eating disorders or disordered eating as well, body image issues, and relationship transitions, people just adjusting to life changes. It could be a life change of a new job that's stressful. It could be a life change of divorce, anything like that. So that's mainly the population I see.
What about your job are you enjoying the most right now? Is it seeing clients make that breakthrough? What is it that keeps you motivated to take on those clients?
Particularly since the pandemic, I have enjoyed seeing more diverse folks come into counseling. So I really love that even in my general like friendships or family or whatever, many more people are talking about mental health. And I love that it's becoming more acceptable. The stigma hopefully is diminishing. Hopefully it'll be extinguished at some point, but I love that folks are connecting with mental health providers and working on themselves, working on their relationships, even a lot more couples. So my caseload in terms of people of color has increased quite a bit. So that makes me very happy because I've always said we all could benefit from therapy. And I love that certain populations are realizing that.
I like that. I like it. Mm-hmm. So let's take it back, way back. When did you first realize you wanted to be a therapist?
So I went to University of Florida for undergrad as a business major at first. Thinking I wanted to be a business major. It came out of me at the time in high school. I was like an FBLA and I was president of FBLA. So I thought just future business leaders of America. And so I was like, yeah, let me go to school. That's a business major. But I tell you, those economics and accounting classes, I didn't gel with them. I didn't enjoy them at all. There's nothing about those classes I enjoyed. So I took a psychology class, just a general psych undergrad, and really connected, felt it was easy, getting an A in that was easy for me. I enjoyed reading the textbooks and going to class. And then I reflected back on, again, back in high school, with the yearbook, they have most likely to fill in the blank. I was most likely to be either Oprah or Dr. Ruth, not be Oprah or Dr., but a combination of that Oprah, Dr. Ruth type of personality. And so I realized that I do enjoy talking with people. I do enjoy helping them. That people would come to me with all their just drama in high school, And so I was like, let me continue taking more psychology classes. So that's what I did. Took some more psychology classes, and I said, okay, yeah, I'm switching my major.
Wow.
So that's it.
A lot of times because there is that stigma, when you communicated what your major was going to be to your loved ones, like, what do they think about, hey, the person I'm helping get through college, they're going to become, a doctor in therapy. Like, how did that go over?
Mm-hmm. Quite well. I don't recall any kind of questions or, what do you want to do? My mom was a teacher. so she was very pleased with that. I come from several people in my family are healthcare professionals, gynecologists and ophthalmologist. My dad was a dentist, so especially going on to higher education, and as a psychologist, you do need a doctorate degree. So no one, I don't recall anybody questioning that. Now, I will say, especially back in the 80s was when it was in college, 80s and 90s. In terms of, I'm from Jamaica. I was born and raised in Jamaica. So being a psychologist, mental health, back then there was like, but they knew here in America, mental health, folks were going to seek mental health. So, but if I were to go back home to Jamaica as a psychologist, it would have been a little trickier at that time.
Like you mentioned, to be, fully licensed psychologist, you have to get your doctorate. And a doctorate can be expensive at times. What was your journey financing your doctorate program, your undergraduate, graduate doctorate program? And what strategy can you advise other folks to get funds to pay for that?
I was quite fortunate. Blessed to have all three universities, my tuition was paid. So I got scholarship for my undergraduate, master's, and doctorate. So that was fortunate. And with the tuition reimbursement for my master's and my doctorate came a stipend. I was like a research assistant or assistant to a professor. So it came with a stipend. Stipend didn't cover everything, so I would still have to take out student loans. So, and especially when I went to Howard for my master's, it was very expensive there and to live in DC, what have you. So I started taking out student loans in my master's degree and my doctorate degree, but definitely having the tuition and stipend was extremely helpful. So my grades got that, my grades and my GRE scores and got that for me. Yeah.
That's pretty good. So what GPA should like students be thinking about to like make sure they can lock in those scholarships? What extracurricular activities they should be thinking about?
These days it's much more competitive. Again, I graduated high school in 1989. So back then you could have like a 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, and get these type of scholarships to, but nowadays I feel for young folks these days, it's way more competitive. Some of my clients, they are, they're stressing to get into a state college, like UGA, with less than a 4.0, so it's with scholarships. So I wouldn't want to call out any numbers now because I haven't been that close to college admissions to know what they're looking for right now. But based on what I'm seeing just amongst my friends' kids or my godchildren or my clients, back then I didn't even take AP classes. So I got a presidential scholarship is what it was called for University of Florida. And I was accepted in my junior year of high school. So I got a letter, just, if you'd like to come here, you got a presidential scholarship. So, and that was without AP classes. But I was active in different school organizations, community volunteering and things like that. But that was 1989. So I would, folks definitely got to talk to their school, college counselors, school advisors, the things they say, but I feel for them because it's much more competitive.
It is. You decided to, or you took a small gap in between your master's and your doctorate. Explain that experience, that time you spent working, how valuable that was to you. And also, what was it like going to get your doctorates while those around you may not be your same age?
I'm glad I did it that way. I think I would have been burnt out thinking about going from preschool all the way, to 10 years of college, right, straight through without a break. I mean, my goodness. So I'm glad I got a bit of a break. I enjoyed my mid-20s living in DC at the time. I worked in a couple different settings during that time. Let me see, 2 different settings. Yeah. One was a group home for children. And another one was a day treatment program for adults. So it was nice having that work experience. And I, I felt it was beneficial to go into my doctorate program with that work experience. I was a behavior therapist in one setting, and so it's like I supervised folks, so it was kind of nice to kind of have that work experience. I was 28 years old when I went for my doctorate, so I wasn't super up there in age, but in terms of my class, my cohort, there were only 8 of us in my cohort. There were 2 of us that were 28 at the time. The rest were a bit young, like 25 or so. I felt I would do it the same way, I would do it the same way. Now I was broke because those jobs back then, I wasn't really making much money. So financially, it wasn't like I was living a great life. I still had to really, live paycheck to paycheck, and work a little part-time job on the side, but I felt the work experience was good.
When you decided to get your doctorate, what were you thinking about as far as what income you could make after you achieved your doctorate designation?
It may sound naive. I didn't think about it. When I was pursuing my doctorate degree, I didn't know I was going to be a psychologist in private practice. I pursued it with the mindset of working for community agency setting, you know. So before my in the past, I had worked at the Boys and Girls Club and really enjoyed that setting. And I just thought I would continue with that type of setting. Maybe eventually become like a director of the Boys and Girls Club, but still start out, something like that. I had never interviewed anyone to ask what's the salary like. I just thought that's where I would end up. As I pursued my doctorate degree, met more folks in private practice, and it was a seamless adjustment from going from being a student into private practice, because I met folks in private practice. A group practice here in Atlanta hired me. And so it was like a seamless thing. I never knew what it would be like. I was on a lot of insurance company plans that back then. I did not ever sit down with somebody and say, so how much do you make? I, I didn't. I didn't. I just wanted to practice psychology.
Wow. I mean, that definitely speaks to the passion that you had for what you were studying. But what do you think about that as far as like, should more communication on what income potential should be, especially given nowadays that they have to pay so much to get these doctorate programs, even master's level, you can easily ring up $150,000. So how do you think about communication of the earning potential to justify, the amount you're going to spend for college?
I do think it's important. Again, maybe I was probably being naive. I think that's why it's good to have mentors. It's good to have discussions with folks. I do recall when I was in graduate school attending a workshop with folks who it was a panel discussion with folks who were in private practice, and they were talking about what private practice was like. So I do remember attending that. It was sponsored through the Georgia Psychological Association. And then when I graduated, I then did a workshop like that. So again, and now I do private practice, like consultation with folks. So I'm very open with what income looks like, if you're in private practice. But yeah, I do think it's important because, yeah, I mean, I did come out with quite a bit of student loans. Yeah.
So usually when somebody's, getting the doctoral program, they pick a specialty. What was your specialty?
Well, it was kind of out of curiosity and accident. Again, this is another thing, is sometimes you plan a certain path and you got to be open and flexible to kind of shifting course sometimes. So when I was at Howard for my master's thesis, my thesis topic was HIV/AIDS. Again, this was 1993. The AIDS crisis was, on the forefront. And so that was my master's thesis topic. So when I came to UGA, I wanted to continue kind of that health psychology type of thing for my dissertation. But I kind of hit a lot of roadblocks with that at UGA. At the same time, I started working in the counseling center on campus. And I had a client, a student at the time, where she was presenting symptoms of bulimia. And I'll be honest with you, didn't know anything about eating disorders. Didn't study it in my master's program. At that point at UGA, hadn't studied in the doctorate program, knew nothing. To my knowledge at that time, didn't know anyone with an eating disorder. Now that I reflect back, I can remember folks who were exhibiting those behaviors, especially in college, right? And so I was so curious. I was like, oh, what is this? So my curiosity is what got me to kind of research more about eating disorders and then change my dissertation topic to a cross-cultural comparison of body image and eating disorder behaviors amongst college students. So that was my dissertation topic. So when it was time for me to apply to internship residency programs, the Medical College of Georgia had an inpatient and outpatient eating disorder program. So that's one of the programs I applied to and got into that program. And so worked inpatient and outpatient. And so as I graduated from UGA, we have to do a postdoctoral fellowship. So all those folks out there, once you get your PhD, you're still not a licensed psychologist. You have to pass the national and then the state test, as well as do a 1-year postdoc. So at that time, there was a treatment center here in Atlanta called Atlanta Center for Eating Disorders. It's since been bought out by Walden. So I created a proposal to the owners to see if I could come on as a postdoc. So, created a proposal, submitted it, they accepted it, and I became a postdoc there. So that's how I got into the specialty.
So for those who aren't aware, what are some like red flags that you have noticed in your practice that somebody may have an eating disorder? What are some of those things that people should be looking out for? Just caring about those who they love.
Mm-hmm. A shift or a change in their usual eating habits or exercise habits, or beliefs or thoughts or rules around food. Some folks that, again, if you think about diets, people jump on a diet craze and then their belief system changes about this, good food, bad food, or I should eat this, or I should exercise this amount, or I should, so whenever there's that shift, oftentimes folks are, I'll just break it down first into more of the restrictive type of eating disorders. Again, skipping meals or saying, oh, I already ate, or I'm not hungry, or I'll eat later, kind of like saying no to food, or when they are eating, sometimes the portion size that they're putting on their plate, or again, only putting certain foods on their plate and omitting other foods, or pushing around foods. Again, sometimes with the restrictive folks, covering, because they're losing weight, covering up their body with baggy clothing, wearing sweatshirts in the middle of the summer, because again, covering up their bodies. In terms of folks who are purging either through like bulimia, whether it be vomiting, it could be after meals, they're gone to the bathroom usually, or their bedroom, because sometimes they are purging through vomiting in Ziploc bags or plastic bags or whatever and hiding it in the room. And there are some physical changes that can occur to one's face and things, from bulimia. Another thing that people don't, I won't go into all the types of purging, but exercise bulimia is pretty common too, where folks are excessively exercising, or if people are starting to use laxatives, diuretics, things like that. But another thing regarding mindset, and then there's binge eating too. Okay, so again, consuming a large amount of food in a short amount of time, typically in a rapid motion, hiding food, sneaking foods, things like that. But I'm going to talk about one that's more of a disordered eating. It's not in the DSM as an eating disorder, but one's called orthorexia. And a lot of people struggle with that. And that is where folks become real rigid around food, kind of like the excessively clean eating, and So folks, they may become malnourished because they're not getting all the nutrients and foods that they need because they have all these rules, rituals, and beliefs around, again, kind of good food versus bad food. So you got to look at the person's mindset too. Like, I shouldn't eat that, or that's bad, those new rules about food.
So I guess it could be similar to somebody deciding to become vegetarian, but they don't realize because I'm vegetarian, I have to expand the type of foods I have to eat to get the necessary nutrients. So I'm starving myself, thinking maybe I look fitter or more slim, but you're really not well, I guess.
Right. Yeah, vegetarian, and the gluten craze was big for a while too. Some people decided to become gluten-free when maybe they didn't have to. They didn't have celiac disease. They didn't have the intolerance to gluten, So, but then the idea of, oh yeah, everything that has gluten in it is bad, so.
Yeah, you don't think about that. You hear about the social media as far as, people want to be thin, but there's also social media as far as what they encourage you to eat, your diet, and there's so much cross misinformation. It can be tough.
Mm-hmm. That's why folks consult with a nutritionist, a registered dietitian.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure they are a registered dietitian, a nutritionist, not just somebody who says they know a lot about food.
Exactly. So
mm-hmm.
you left, I think UGA, and you went into private practice. What was that like, joining a private practice? Like, what was going through your mind initially, and what was like the day-to-day life like?
I was quite fortunate. I loved the practice. They're still in existence, so I'll say their name, Powers Ferry Psychological Associates. Wonderful group of people. I really still consider one of the owners my mentor, Dr. Steve Perlow. So they were very welcoming. It was wonderful. I felt like they were mentoring me. That group had every other week, we had case consultation meetings where we could get together as a group and discuss cases. So I was constantly learning and growing. I used to do an adolescent group with Dr. Perlow. So I got more group experience from working there. Learned about the business side of private practice. Again, that's important. We don't learn that in graduate school. Well, I don't know about now, but back then, no one taught us about the business side of being a psychologist, especially in private practice. So I felt like it was a soft landing. I didn't have to kind of learn things on my own and figure things. I had to figure some things out, but I had people I could ask, and folks who were seasoned. I mean, like, everyone there at the time they're much larger now, but when I joined, I was, I think, the 6th or 7th psychologist to join the practice, and everyone there was more seasoned than I was.
So what were some of the business nuggets you gained from being in that private practice experience?
Oh, so much. Definitely marketing. You have to how to market yourself. You can't, I didn't want to just rely on the practice to send clients my way, especially if I was looking for a certain population of clients, So how to market yourself, dealing with insurance companies for sure. I learned that through them. The paperwork side. Again, I did not leave graduate school with a handbook of intake documents, or and then HIPAA compliance came out, or things like that. Like, we didn't get that information. We were just learning the clinical side, not the administrative side. The money management part, again, definitely needing to get an accountant and disability insurance and things like that. Again, I did not get that from graduate school. So listening and learning from my colleagues about what's needed. And I was an independent contractor. I was self-employed. So I was a 1099. I wasn't a W. So again, I had to learn what it meant to be an independent contractor I was always an employee before. Yeah. So again, learning about that. Health insurance, things like that. I have to get health insurance as an independent contractor. And I was single at the time when I joined that practice. So yeah, so much I learned.
Well, how would you advise somebody gain that knowledge? Let's say somebody wants to go on their own for private practice, and like you, they weren't exposed to those things. How do you gain that knowledge? Maybe in a faster way, potentially.
Well, again, that's another reason why I started offering private practice consultation to mental health providers. I have had a few outside of the field of mental health, physicians, but because yeah, I need it would have been nice if somebody walked me through step by step. Again, joining that group practice, they were very open to showing me the ropes, but you you need to talk with somebody who's going to take you through the steps of how to form a private practice, establish and grow and thrive in a private practice, and even things now of closing a private practice. You do need a professional will. You do, I mean, things like that. You don't just shut it down. You don't just like tell your clients, oh yeah, I'm about to retire and bye. There's some things you have client records and you have finances that still need to be wrapped up and things like that. So definitely talking to folks about what steps should you take, and talk to multiple people. I mean, I'm not the encyclopedia of, the only encyclopedia. So talk to multiple people. Yeah. And nowadays, sometimes there are a lot of private practice workshops. I will say that now, folks, through you can find private practice how-tos, in private practice, and a lot more people are doing what I'm talking about, offering private practice consultation. Yeah.
It definitely sounds like, open your mouth, ask, be resourceful. That's all. I think that's most business, how most business work. To get that knowledge, you do have to ask somebody who's been there.
Right.
There's something in therapy that comes out a lot, and that's called being burned out.
Right.
You experience being burnt out. What is that like? What is it? And how do you cope with that?
Definitely, yes, I've experienced burnout. The most recent one was definitely during the pandemic. I mean, again, I'm glad people were reaching out for mental health, but I was seeing a lot more clients than I usually would see. The acuity of their issues were high. I mean, many people were having family members pass away from COVID, things like that, financial struggle, social injustice. I mean, the issues were pretty heavy. And so definitely have to pace yourself. I call, know your plate size, like how much you can really handle on your plate, or your cup size. Like I'm about a water glass size. Like I can handle this much, in a glass. I would say, I'm just going to use Kamala Harris right now. It's like, she is a big gulp, like a pitcher, like the amount of stress that she's under right now. I don't know if I don't think I can handle that amount of stress, and I own it. I know that that's not the amount of stress I can take in my day to day, and so to be honest with that. So what does that look like? Do you see 5 clients a day, 7 clients a day, 10 clients a day? Do you give yourself a break? During the pandemic was the first time I gave myself a full hour lunch. Because before then, I wouldn't take, I know it's not the best, but I would see clients throughout the day, and just kind of eat in between sessions. Not the best routine, right? But when I found myself overwhelmed and reaching burnout during the pandemic, I said, you know what? I got to block off an hour in the middle of the day. Yeah. So, so knowing your cup size, or knowing your plate size, are you a bread plate, a salad plate, dinner plate, a platter, right? And know your population that you can serve right now. So my mom passed away 10 years ago. For about 3 years after that, I just didn't feel it'd be appropriate for me, or I could take on anybody struggling with grief. I was going through my own grief, so I had to sort of say no to folks going through grief, right? And then when I started feeling better, I felt like I could really be helpful and beneficial to a client. I took on clients struggling with grief, and now I feel like I do well, with clients going through grief. So you just have to know your patient population. Again, same thing now. It's like, I'm 53 years old. I don't know if I can really be the best psychologist to a 5-year-old as I used to, with play therapy and all of that stuff. Again, if I had to take on very young cases and high acuity all the time and things like that. Same thing with eating disorders. I mean, for a while now, I haven't been accepting any new eating disorder cases because during the pandemic, I was, and a lot of treatment programs or other professionals like psychiatrists and pediatricians and nutritionists weren't accepting new clients. So, it was kind of difficult to treat that population when we really needed a treatment team approach. It was hard to find a treatment team care group at certain times, or treatment centers were full. Yeah, treatment centers were full. So you kind of know, again, what your patient population needs to be, the number of work hours, definitely balancing life with, balancing, it's not really balancing, but I got my Peloton during the pandemic early, July of 2020. I was like, I got to keep up this exercise to kind of help with the stress management, taking walks. I started hiking. I never really was into hiking much. Now I have my hiking poles and everything, it's like, let me drive somewhere on a Saturday and hike and be out in nature. So things like that to help with managing my stress.
That's good.
Also gardening. I picked up gardening. Flower, not growing, but I did grow tomatoes. That's it. Flowers, plants and flowers and shrubs. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's interesting. So it's knowing how much capacity you have, and then knowing your own personal coping mechanism or just working out. How do you communicate how much capacity you have to your employer? Is it something that you need to take into account before you apply for a job? But how do you communicate, this is my caseload, I can take on 8 clients a day. I know you would like me to take on 10 because it's good for the firm, but how do you communicate that this is my capacity?
Definitely be strong and confident in what you are saying, and letting them know that you can be your best self at this case load or what have you, or this client population. Again, if somebody was forcing me to see a bunch of 5-year-olds, and doing play therapy 5 hours a day, I would not be my best self. I don't think I would be doing great work, And so I think be confident in how you're presenting that and set those boundaries. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned that, hey, I joined the firm, great firm, learned a lot, but for some reason you decided to go out on your own. And I think it's a different scenario with you because you were a 1099 employee. So there was some element of independence already within your day-to-day life. But explain that process of thinking, hey, I want to do my own thing, my own way.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be honest, it wasn't my idea. A colleague approached me. Yeah, it was. I can't take credit for sparking that idea. A colleague, somebody I had known since graduate school, approached me and said, would you like to go into private practice together? I was thinking about, this. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's talk about it. Talked about it. And of course, decided to do it. And at that time, again, I was in my mid-30s at that time. It sounded like a great idea. I'm glad I did it. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. I reached a point though where I was like, okay, I'm tired of managing people and putting out fires a lot, because we grew into 2 separate locations. Our practice grew, the number of people that we hired grew, things like that. So it became a lot more business management, human resources. I was getting further away from being a psychologist because I had to do that, do that part of the practice. So it was just a sort of, it felt right at the time, it felt right at the time. Yeah.
Were you scared at all?
Scared? No, I wouldn't say scared. I wasn't scared. I consulted with folks, I consulted with some people who were more seasoned than me, who had been owners of group practices. And also, don't know if folks know, but I guess in every state, but in the state of Georgia, they offer free business consultation through SBA. So you can get free business. Well, at that time, again, this was 2007-ish. You know, you can get free business consultation through the Small Business Association. So I wasn't going in blindly, you know. I made sure I was had a solid business plan and the money available and things like that. Yes, kind of scared because I did invest a lot of, we both invested a lot of our own personal, our own money, you know, but I felt like we were going to be successful, and we were, you know, it was a successful adventure. Yeah.
Like it. So you hang your shingle. I'm in business. I've done all the compliance things, but the toughest part for a lot of initial businesses is gaining clients. Where did you find your clients coming from? Were you able to roll over some clients from your previous practice that you were in? How did you get enough business to sustain your lifestyle?
Luckily, I was able to roll over clients. I mean, some practices, you have to be mindful when you enter a contract with a practice about their non-compete clause. So luckily, clients were able to follow me to my new practice. So be mindful of that when you're signing a contract, what the non-compete clause looks like. In terms of marketing, I do remember when I first joined that practice, I literally sent out letters to just people, you know, how did I find? I sent out letters to other practices. I sent out letters to schools, universities, and high schools, middle schools, and just the school counselors, you know, saying, "Hi, my name is Judi-Lee." I was Nelson back then. You know, I am a new psychologist at Powers Ferry Psychological Associate. I see this population, blah, 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 put my business card in there and mail it out. So I do remember doing a mass mailing when I first started. I I tend to connect well with people. So I was pretty active in the Georgia Psychological Association at the time. I'm still a member, but not as active. Um, any kind of networking event or organization, I do tend to connect well with people. Always have your business cards. Always have your business cards. Well, you know. Um, so kind of making those contacts. And then when you do good work, people will refer. So if one Spelman student comes to you and reports back to wherever their other, classmates or the Spelman Counseling Center or what have you, that they liked working with me, you're going to get more referrals, so do good work, and if somebody referred, this is another thing that I think folks need to realize is when you get a referral, you not only thank the person, it could be a thank you card, a call, what have you. I give gifts to folks, meaning like, holiday time, or if I'm visiting them at their office, you take a token, like a small gift, right? As a thank you, or hello, we can put your business cards, your brochure, whatever you have in there. And, but if they want to collaborate, if they want to hear how the client is doing, of course, get a release of information from the client or what have you. But I've gotten feedback from folks that they like working with me because I collaborate, whether it's an OBGYN referring their patient, whether it's a chiropractor, referring one of their patients, what have you. It's like, they're like, oh, you keep in touch with me and let me know how the patient I sent to you is doing, So that helps. That helps for sure. But the networking events, I know a lot of folks, some folks don't like to network, but when you're in this kind of business, sometimes you have to network, especially back then, back in the, mid 2000s again. Instagram and all that stuff wasn't a thing, I mean, people didn't market themselves that way, so word of mouth.
Now, sending out a mailer to all your friends and family members, that's a pretty, advanced marketing tactic. Like, who is telling you these things? When you go to a network event, always have a business card. That wasn't taught to you at UGA. Who kind of advised you? What did you observe through osmosis? Like, because that's not a given, those tactics that you laid out.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I joined the group practice, we all got business cards. So I do remember that, and I don't know if if the owners at the practice says, well, yeah, come on board, but then, you know, you gotta, but I don't remember them giving me a mailing list. I know that. I think I just started researching, you know, practices in the area, like schools and practices and doctors' offices. Yeah, yes. I just did my own research because I remember just random doctor's office. Like, what type of clients do I want to see? So, women's health. Then I'm going to research all the OBGYNs in a 5-10 mile radius or whatever, you know. My doctors, of course, you know. So yeah, I they didn't give me a mailing list. I know that. But maybe somebody there, maybe one of the owners says, well, you know, you're going to have to market yourself. Um, and that's what I did. Sent out a letter. Yeah. Yeah. And I still do that. Like, so when I transitioned into solo practice, again, sent out another mass mailing with my new brochure, my new business cards, and letting them know where I'm located and what client population I'm now seeing and things like that. So yeah, I'm not great with social media, so I didn't do it. I don't do Instagram and Facebook ads or whatever. I don't even post a lot of personal stuff on those platforms. So I haven't done that. You know, some social media marketing, you're gonna have to talk to somebody else about that. I don't even know how to do that. But I did back in 2019 when I transitioned into solo practice, I sent out a mass mailing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I've been hearing. That process still works today. You know, we do have
Okay.
social media, we do have promotions, but sending a personal note to a doctor's office, reminding them that you still exist during the holidays, I don't think that goes away.
Right. And also offering, I did do a lot of this, is offering kind of lunch meetings, like go into a doctor's office, a pediatrician's office, gynecologist's office, or whatever, offered to talk to their staff, because they all take a lunch break, you know, offer to come into their break room, introduce myself, you know, bring something, you know, to them, and get to know all of their staff. So that's important too. School counselors do that with, you know, the schools around, you know, I'm in Cobb County. So Cobb County and the private schools around my office area, I've been to every one of those schools. Yeah. Oh, and then, you know, and then sometimes they'll ask you to do a talk. It's free sometimes, right? Do it. You're then talking to their school population or their parents or their administrators on certain topics. Definitely do that.
That's bored. That's good. Now, were you ever shy, or did you always have an outgoing personality, open to meet people and welcome them into who you are? Like, is that just naturally who you are? Or is that something you had to work on?
No, I'm naturally that way. I wouldn't consider myself shy. I'm not an extrovert, you know, and I'm the type where if I've been busy and around a lot of people, then I do need some downtime. Like I'm in a sorority, and we just had a sorority retreat a couple weekends ago, and like the next weekend I was like, okay, I don't want to do anything this weekend. I just need some time to recharge or what have you. So but kind of going to a conference and saying hello or sitting down and talking at a table with folks or whatever, I feel comfortable with that. Luckily, I don't have that anxiety. Some people do, and I understand that. Some people are very much introverts. I get that. So again, I've talked to other professionals about that, how to kind of turn that on, and then you get to, you know, take some time for yourself. But you gotta turn it on. You have to turn it on.
So during our pre-call, we mentioned 4 specialties that you have, and I'd like for you to speak on those and some of the things that you're seeing in your population. The first one is poor boundaries. In the clients you serve, how do you see poor boundaries being shown? And what advice do you have people of establishing good boundaries?
Yes, the boundaries thing it's been huge. You know, poor boundaries, a lot of times it comes from these messages we've received, like these shoulds and musts.
Mhm.
Sometimes from our family of origin, sometimes from our culture, maybe gender, what have you, society, what have you. It's like these rules that we have to kind of investigate, well, where did that come from? And how much truth is there? And do you want to believe that? Do you want to believe that that's how it should be? And what speaks true to you versus these shoulds and musts, these rules that you know. So kind of helping a person. A lot of my clients realize that, I mean, I just met with one yesterday who, unfortunately, her mom was very ill throughout her life. So the rule for her was she had to be a caretaker. She had to take, that, and so she couldn't say no. So she still harbors a lot of guilt when she feels the need to say no to somebody and not, to sacrifice herself to help someone, again, not saying that people shouldn't be helpers, but, so sometimes you have to set a boundary and say, no, I can't today, but maybe I can next week, something like that. So does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
It does, because I think it's important in this day and age, people are living longer. And sometimes it doesn't mean they're living the full life longer. It's sometimes kids have to come in and help out. How much help should a person give? And that goes back to what you mentioned, that should anything. Any other boundaries that you're seeing people not holding on to?
In terms of whether it be work relationships or romantic relationships or sibling, family relationships, is people putting their needs and even their beliefs aside. Try not to be too specific, give too much like specific client information, but definitely just the saying no, or if somebody wants to not have another child, or just really when folks are going against what really makes sense to them, and they struggle with saying that doesn't feel good to me, that will overwhelm me, that will, if you truly feel strong in with a belief system or an issue, your voice is as valid as the next person's voice. Of course, you may not always agree with the other person, but again, same thing like you talked about. If a employer is wanting you to work longer hours, see certain clients, or what have you, you trust yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else. Trust yourself. Because if you're going to take the oxygen mask off yourself to help others, you're not going to breathe. You're going to suffocate, or you're going to stop breathing, or what have you. You're going to pass out, what have you. You got to make sure you're getting enough oxygen so that you can be beneficial and helpful to others. So boundaries doesn't necessarily mean yes or no. It may mean not right now, not today. I can only see 6 clients a day instead of 8 or 9. It just putting on some guardrails, so that you're not driving off the cliff.
Now, the next ones are kind of similar. It's lack of self-care and poor lifestyle. What I've observed just watching society is that, poor lifestyle, poor decisions are compounding over time. What have you seen in your client population as far as lack of self-care, poor lifestyle that folks are dealing with?
I'm definitely, in the last, I would say, 10 years of my practice, I've gotten more into wellness. So, poor sleep habits, poor hygiene, we call it sleep hygiene. Oh my gosh. It's a question on my intake form about how one sleep. 9 times out of 10, it's really poor sleep habits that people have. I also ask about exercise and nutrition habits as well. So those 3 areas, some folks are just not doing well, So I do look at that from the onset of our work together. The boundaries things comes up. I saw this a lot during the pandemic. Of course, a lot more people smoking.
Wow.
Cigarettes, marijuana, vape pens, whatever, and a lot more alcohol use. I don't specialize in substance use, and I make that very clear, when folks come to see me, or when they're inquiring about services. I don't specialize in addiction issues, but a lot more people who are, utilizing alcohol to cope with their emotions or to sleep better, you know. So lifestyle in term and that whole ripping and running, you know, kind of like being too busy, right? Folks forget that there's just 24 hours in a day, and you know, you can't expect yourself to do all of that in one day and feel emotionally stable. You're gonna, you know, you might want to use an unhealthy coping mechanism to cope if you're expecting yourself to do too much, you know, in the 24-hour period. Or not just a 24-hour period, just at all, you know, just too much. You know, I laugh when some folks are like, I have this to do, this to do, this to do, this to do. And then I adopted a puppy. Okay, I'm a pet lover too. I have a pet, but I don't know if right now is the time that you need a puppy. A puppy. You have to train the puppy. I mean, it's like the puppy needs to go out several times a day. Do you even have a yard? You know, just, but they took on another responsibility. Cute little puppy, but it's another responsibility. I'm like, is this a good time? So but in terms of lifestyle, yeah, it's just some folks are just shopping, you know, excessive spending is a big thing that a lot of people do, especially during the pandemic. You know, I guess Amazon and UPS and FedEx was really busy because folks were doing a lot of online shopping, you know. But yeah, I try to get them to engage in healthier daily living skills.
I like that. Now, how would you define self-care? What is self-care? Because I think sometimes in social media, they portray it as one thing, but as a therapist, how are you defining self-care for your clients?
Yeah, a lot of people think self-care, like, you know, skincare regimen and getting your nails done or, you know, exercise, things like those. Those are big ways to take care of yourself. But knowing what you need, knowing what your body needs, knowing what your mind needs, your soul, whether it could be spirituality, it could be just rest, it could be saying no to things or people. Self-care is really, what do you need to feel emotionally stable, emotionally well, feel like you're thriving? And it's going to be different from, I know what I need, fresh air. I benefit from being outside doing, it could be sitting outside. Actually, my neighbor is now walking his 3 dogs and he always has 2 cats following him. So I love going for walks in the neighborhood. I need fresh air. I don't do well to stay in a building and go maybe to the parking garage in my car and then come on and that's it. I mean, no, fresh air is self-care to me.
I think that's good. That's good. Now, one thing that you mentioned is that you go to different networking events. Kind of talk about, as a business owner, building your brand in the community. You do a lot in the community. So, like, how do you think about building a personal brand in your local area?
Building a personal brand in my local area. Do you mean, like, again, is that going back to the marketing piece?
A lot of those things that you mentioned, as far as talking to doctors, going to Spelman, any other affiliations, like, how do you think that has manifested to your business success?
Oh, a great deal. Again, who do I feel like I can serve well? What client population do you think I can serve? Do I feel like I can serve well? I need to reach out to those folks who also serve or have those folks in their network. And so that's where I love working with college students. It's a no-brainer. I need to reach out to college student centers, you know. I love working with in women's health issues. So no brainer, gynecologists, you know. So chiropractors are into wellness. I need to reach out to chiropractors. So when people think about me, they typically know who I work well with, you know. so I get, those are the, now sometimes I get a referral with, okay, that's not my, like I don't do testing. I don't specialize in ADD, so sometimes I'll get somebody, a doctor will refer somebody for ADD testing. I'm like, oh, what? Okay. I'll have to refer that person out. But usually I'm reaching out to folks where they are working with a similar population. Yeah. And so, mhm.
Describe as a business owner the value of a good accountant. Like,
Oh,
what has been your
didn't I
experience?
tell you I didn't enjoy accounting in undergrad? I did not. I don't know anything about accounting. Yeah.
Yeah. So how was it like? Have you always had a good accountant? What is your relationship? How do you nurture a relationship with a good accountant? Like, talk about those things.
Yeah. When I was at that first practice, this is again, I just used an accountant up the street. He was literally within walking distance on Powers Ferry Road, and I'm about convenience. Oh, I prefer everything to be conveniently located for me. And so it made sense for me to work with him. And he had worked with an accountant who had worked with other healthcare providers or private small business owners, right? And so and he's still, I don't know if he's still in business, but he was great. There's no reason why I stopped necessarily going with him, except for when I moved into owning the group practice. My colleague, my co-business owner, and we used the same accountant because we needed somebody to manage the business accounts. And it just made sense for me to transfer my personal business and my home, my personal account, my business account, and then the group practice account to the same person. So, and I've been with that gentleman since 2008. He's been my accountant. Yeah. Yeah.
So what makes a good accountant in your mind? Like, what type of services they're providing that, hey, I really like this? What is something that a practice owner should look out for when utilizing an accountant for their practice?
Now, I'm probably not the best in answering this question. I'm so sorry. I just trust him. I do what he tells me to do. I mean, like, I may ask some questions because people like, oh, I have a colleague who's doing this, but is that legal? Of course, I want to make sure I'm, following the law. But he has guided me well. I also have a financial advisor though, who I've had since I was in my 20s. So I rely on her more. So the accountant, he does my taxes, blah, 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 the business part of the finances. But I do rely on my financial advisor more for when I have more in-depth questions about what to do with the money. Yeah.
Any advice on how to find and leverage a good financial planner? What are some of the things that a practice owner should be looking for a financial planner? Like, what are you enjoying about dealing with your financial planner?
Okay, this is not. I found mine when I was about 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Her name, my first name is Judi-Lee. It's hyphenated, Judi hyphen capital Lee. Her name is Judi-Lee. Her first name is Judy. Her middle name is Lee. So I was like, okay. And we're both members of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. So I was like, so again, not a good answer for, in terms of how other people can find one. But she was introduced to me by a colleague, a coworker, when I was in DC still. And she's been my financial advisor ever since. And she's walked me through so many stages of life from, should I take out this money to put into a private practice? We at the time of when I started a private practice, we bought a building. So again, real estate investment piece of it. How fast should I pay back my student loans? Or, I want to buy this house. But I just go to her. I just go to her for everything. And again, she hasn't steered me wrong. Everything has worked out, but very well. So I trust her. And she and my accountant communicate when needed. Like if they need to, things like I can put more into my 401k because the new law, blah, blah. Again, I don't know. I trust that he's telling me the right thing. And so far, so good. And then I communicate with Judy and I follow their advice.
That makes sense. I think something that you're saying is I trust that person.
Yeah.
I trust my financial planner. Now, as a business owner, planning for retirement is different than if you're a W-2 employee. What are some of the things that your financial advisor is doing that really is moving the needle that makes say, okay, when I stop practicing, I think I'll be okay?
Oh yeah. So we actually just met in July. So once a year. So I you might have to correct me on this. I think when I started with a SEP IRA. Does that sound right? Okay. And then transitioned to a 401k. I don't know why or how, but again, I just follow Judy's advice, right? Yeah. Um, um, but we meet once a year to go over all of my personal, myself and my husband's numbers, as well as my business, and make sure I'm where I need to be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just for people listening, that is a natural progression, starting off initially with a SEP IRA,
Okay.
and then going to a solo 401k, especially because I think you don't have employees that have a partner. So solo 401k definitely suits what you're trying to do. So it's a really good decision.
Okay. Okay. See, again, I just did what she told me to do.
But
Yeah.
I think it shows that you are willing to saying, I need an expert and I have intuition to say I can trust this person. And I
Mhm.
leverage that for my benefit. And I've been doing that regularly. So it's worked out well for you.
Mhm.
So what do you think is next for your practice? Like what are you thinking about the future holds within the next 10 or 20 years?
So again, I'm right now 53. Um, I don't want to work harder. Meaning, so funny. A friend of mine who's a little older than me. Um, yes, this funny. She works for a law firm, and her, I guess, boss, supervisor, whoever, they were going over her next plans for next few years. And so I've copied her term here. She says, "No goals or aspirations." I love that. I'm going to use that, but no. So during the pandemic, I added another certification in EMDR, which is working with trauma. But I realized it's a lot of work, and the client population, it's quite a bit, right? Quite a bit to take on. And so I have decided, like things like, okay, I need to slow down on that. Um, I'm selecting which clients I take on a little bit, kind of making sure, is this going to be really good fit? Back in the day when I was 32, 33 years old, I took on, again, I don't treat substance abusers, but I had some even crack addicts on my caseload. Again, I would take on, because I was more of a generalist, like I was new to the field. I took on almost any, again, 5-year-olds, what have you. So now I'm like, oh no, I need to really see if this is going to be a good fit for me and the client, right? Do I have the amount of time to allocate to certain clients that they need? A client coming in with a full-blown eating disorder really needs a lot more time that I may have to offer them right now. So I'm in a phase where I'm not getting ready to retire, but I am in a phase where, again, those boundaries are a little bit more firm. Because hey, I just started playing pickleball. I need time to play pickleball. I would never have thought about playing pickleball on a work day. That was out of the question 10 years ago. You see what I'm saying? Like, and now some mornings I play pickleball before seeing clients. I would never have thought of that before. And I still take that lunch break. So that's where I am right now, where it's like I have busted my butt for many years. If you think about it, if you think about school, university and grad school, to private practice, owning a private practice, a group practice. Now I'm kind of like in my ease ease on through to get to retirement phase.
I like what you said. In our world, they say there's riches and niches, and that's kind of what you described. Who can I serve the best way that I also feel good at serving on a regular basis? Like, how has that kind of benefited you narrowing down who you see, having the confidence to say, no, that's not something that I do. Here goes another resource for you. Like, how has that kind of gave you more peace within your business?
Well, actually, I'm going to answer that question another way first, personally, because to be honest, 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And since then, you know, with autoimmune diseases, it attacks your body. So since then, I've unfortunately now have 2 additional diagnoses, pretty chronic issues going on. So wellness is extremely important to me. You know, I have to take really good care of myself. No ifs, ands, or buts. The old days of seeing clients until, well, I think I told you before we start, like I used to see clients till 11 o'clock. I'm a night owl, so my sleep habits were very poor. So, and then I went to 9 o'clock and then 8 o'clock. You know, if I'm seeing a client till 8 o'clock at night, I'm not finishing up my notes until, and plus I got to eat dinner, shower. Am I going to work out at that time of night? No. You know, sort of like, I'm not going to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning. That's not wellness. And that's not good, taking good care of my health. So 10 years ago, I really did have to make the shift. I can't be in that hustle mode anymore because I have to take care of myself. Yeah. So how it has helped my practice, I am very alert and available and present when I'm working now. When I was co-owner of the group practice, I don't know if I was as present because sometimes you're putting out fires and then you're seeing a client. The toilet is overflowing and then you have to see a client. This person's not showing up to work, so then you have to see a client. You have to hire somebody new for the front office and you have to see a client. A better transition is pickleball than see a client. That's a better transition.
I can't imagine how much you're glowing if you won the game with.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, pickleball is a big thing. I played pickleball yesterday. I had a blast. So
oh, really? Did you? Okay, good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I think you laid out a lot of different things, especially for somebody wanting to go in their practice, whether it's niching, whether it's finding a population that you're comfortable with, whether it's just, hey, sometimes you have to get out in the community and talk to people. I think that is really valuable. So thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. This has been fun. I appreciate it.
No problem. Take care. If you've been inspired to leverage your practice to create financial freedom, please schedule a consultation with Deasil Wealth Management. The legacy you dreamed of is a 15-minute phone call away from becoming a reality.
The more I know, the more money I can make.